So, good afternoon, Dr. Dibakar and my dear participants. We are starting our next session, and we are fortunate enough to have Dr. Dibakar Raksit with us, and I'm privileged to introduce him. Before that, I thank him on behalf of the coordinators and participants for accepting our invitation to deliver a talk in this Atal Faculty Development Program so that participants can learn about various aspects of green chemistry and engineering in the detail case studies. So, Dr. Dipakar Raksit is currently an associate professor at Center for Energy Studies, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. He has 16 years experience in thermofluid sciences pertaining to design and optimization of energy systems. His special interests lie in thermofluid studies of solar energy, coupled heat exchanger designs, energy conservation in buildings, solar assisted solar assisted refrigeration systems. Other participants, please mute your video and the mic, please. Multi-phase flows and emission control system designs. His PhD at the University of Western Australia involved studies of multi-phase mass transfer phenomena related to thermal diffusion of liquefied natural gas, that is cryogenic fluids. From there onwards, Dr. Rakshit developed his deep interest for thermal energy storage and pursued it further in his postdoctoral research at Australian Solar Thermal Research Initiative, CSIRO, Australia. Dr. Raksit was mainly involved in characterizing the thermal behavior of the solar receiver heat transfer fluid required for power generation. After joining IIT Delhi as an assistant professor, Dr. Raksit continued his study of thermal energy storage capacity of materials that can be utilized for building energy conservation. Dr. Raksit then started pursuing his further research in the area of characterization of nano-enhanced phase change materials for thermal energy storage in walls. At IIT Delhi, Dr. Raksit's research has been sponsored by the Department of Science and Technology in both national and international programs, Ministry of Education, GOI, DRDO, and many private sectors. Besides this, Dr. Rakshit got funding from IIT Delhi for developing a new building material characterization laboratory. The major facilities which are available in this laboratory are differential scanning calorimeter and infrared camera other than regular chemical characterization apparatus. Dr. Dibakar Raksit has a track record of publishing around 50 research papers in journals of international repute, 15 monographs, and around 40 referred conference papers. So we have such a nice and learned personality with us today. And I hand over the session to Dr. Raksit. Uh, Please, Dr. Raksit, sir.
Thank you, madam, for the introduction, and good afternoon, all of you. I hope I am audible to all.
Yes,
So
sir, you're audible.
I will just start sharing my presentation so that we can. So is my slide visible?
Yes, sir.
It's visible, right? Okay. Thank you, madam. So yeah, good afternoon, all of you. Today I will be speaking about thermal energy storage, in particular with applications for sustainable cooling, or you can say green cooling. So Basically, this is a research which has been conducted at IIT Delhi under the flagship of Department of Science and Technology's one international program which we are having with Trento University in Italy. So, and again, IIT Roorkee is also involved in this project. So, our part, like IIT Delhi's part, was with the designing of the thermal energy storage device, which will be coupled with one non-conventional type of cooling technology. Basically, non-conventional type of cooling technology, I think you will be aware of, which are not the regular type of cooling technology like the vapor compression technology, which we generally utilize for air conditioners or any sort of means mega scale cooling which we have to do. So non-conventional vapor absorption technology, vapor adsorption technology. So these are some of the non-conventional technology where the power requirement is quite low. The auxiliary power requirement is quite low. Basically, we don't have any mechanical compressor. We replace it by a kind of chemical mechanism which replaces that mechanical compressor by a term which is known as the thermodynamic compressor. So today I will be discussing about vapor absorption cooling technology and coupling that vapor absorption cooling system with thermal energy storage device to get the cooling perennially without having any sort of gap. Basically, this is a solar based cooling which we are utilizing for this vapor absorption cooling technology. So since sun is not available throughout, so we will be having a design which will not be affected by the absence of solar energy during night time. So that is the introductory slide will be discussing about the cooling technology in general, and then in particular I will be discussing about the thermal energy storage device, or sometimes it is also called thermal batteries. So if you name it in a way that we are storing energy, so means other than electrical energy, it is the thermal energy which is getting stored, and we are utilizing it when we are actually in requirement of it. We are tapping it when we are actually in requirement of it. So that's why it is known as thermal battery. So means more specifically I will be concentrating on that part, because the other part of absorption cooling technology, I think means people would have heard about it, and means my area of concern today will be more on the designing of that latent heat thermal energy storage, or the thermal battery, as I mentioned. So to start with, to sensitize the topic, so I think now means we are in the third day of this workshop, so you are much aware of the increasing need in energy demand, and with various stringent environmental legislations which we are going to follow for coming up with any new technology. So definitely we have to find a balance between the energy utilization as well as the ecological balance which we have to maintain, because at the end of the day it is our environment which is to be protected in a way that the balance is maintained between our energy utilization and the ecology which is to be maintained in a proper balance. So speaking about those things, I am hinting around that we should definitely go for those type of energy sources which are renewable in nature. Now when I'm speaking about renewable sources, so basically these are those sources of energy where the rate at which it is being utilized will be more or less equal to the rate at which it is being replenished or it is being replaced. But when we are speaking about the general trend, like the maximum amount of energy which we use today is not the renewable form of energy, because there are a lot of limitations, or there are a lot of challenges when we plan to use renewable energy. And we know that the basic source of any renewable energy is solar energy, but solar energy again is having its own limitations. The first limitation is it is intermittent because of the rotation of the Earth about its own axis, the day and night formation, the diurnal variation. We don't get sun throughout 24 hours because of the revolution of the Earth around the sun, the seasonal variations which we get. Again, we don't get the intensity of the sun throughout 365 days in a uniform manner, how we envisage or how we plan to tap it throughout. So of course, and again, if you say, then the way the solar energy is concentrated, like the concentration ratio is also not very appropriate. It is quite dilute. The surface area over which we are achieving this solar radiation is quite large. So in that case, we can say that these limitations are always there with the basic forms of renewable energy like solar energy. And of course, it will be affecting other interconnected forms of solar energy, other interconnected forms of renewable energy, and any other renewable energy which you can think of. So of course, these are some of the limitations if we are trying to utilize solar energy for tapping it and utilize it for some sort of technology. Here I am planning to utilize it for cooling technologies. But of course, if we are saying that we will be employing solar energy for cooling technology, then how to tap it and store it for a perennial use, so that there should not be any sort of intermittency which comes whenever there is the requirement of the cooling. For example, we know that after say 4 p.m. the intensity of sun goes down, but if at that time also we require some sort of cooling to be done, then how we can utilize this solar coupled cooling technology? That is a question. So now coming to the non-conventional cooling technology, as I will be discussing today about the absorption chillers. So one of the greatest disadvantage of this non-conventional cooling technologies is its coefficient of performance. The coefficient of performance is quite low. I think you will be aware of what does coefficient of performance means. Like it is the ratio of the desired effect. Desired effect means if we are attempting to extract some amount of heat from a particular control volume to the amount of work which we have to give to achieve that desired effect is known as the coefficient of performance. So generally, coefficient of performance for the vapor compression system or the refrigerators which we are having, they are quite high. Means they go up to 2 to 4, and sometimes a bit higher than that. But the coefficient of performance of this non-conventional cooling technology is quite low. Means it will be somewhere say 0.4 to 0.7. Means we have done some experiments. Of course, they were not done in a very ideal situation. We even got means the coefficient of performance to be lower as 0.35. So in that case, you can see that there is one biggest limitation to utilize this type of non-conventional cooling technology like vapor absorption or vapor adsorption technology, where the coefficient of performance or the amount of heat which you can extract from a particular control volume is quite low. Means the efficiency is quite low. Now there are various means through which you can enhance this means probability of extracting heat or making the control volume to be cool. That is, the first one in this one is the multi-stage or double effect absorption chiller. So basically this non-conventional type of system, they are also having two sides. One is the evaporator side, which is on the lower temperature side, and another one is the condenser side. So this evaporator side will be having one absorption absorber side, and the condenser side will be having the generator side. So if we can some way or the other make this generator side or the condenser side to have the temperature of the fluid which is entering, basically they are the heat exchangers, the evaporator and the condenser. So if on the condenser side, if some way or the other we can maintain the temperature of the fluid which is entering, basically it is the water, the hot water which is required to carry out this process of absorption cooling. If some way or the other we can maintain the temperature of the water around say 180 degrees centigrade, then in that case we can get some better coefficient of performance, not as compared to that what we get for our vapor compression cycle, but then also it will be much better. So to get that type of a higher COP or higher coefficient of performance, say around 1.5 or so, definitely we require the water to be at say around 160 to 180 degrees centigrade. Now the challenge is how to maintain this temperature of the water throughout. If we are requiring it to be coupled with some solar cooling technology as the absorption technology, how to maintain it at that point throughout. So there comes the requirement of this thermal energy storage or the thermal battery, which I am speaking about, and it should be effective enough to have this heat to be holding for a long time, and thus we will be having a very discontinuous or perennial supply of the heat energy or the thermal energy which is required to provide the temperature of the water, to provide the water at temperature of whatever we require, around 160 to 180 degrees centigrade. So this is basically the motivation with which we started the designing of this thermal energy storage system or the thermal battery. Now, I think I discussed a bit about how this absorption chiller works. So basically, it will be having two sides, as I told, the absorber side and the condenser side. And again, in the on the condenser side, there will be one charging, and on the absorber side, there will be one discharging, which will be happening. But our whole aim is not to concentrate on this absorber chiller. The whole aim is how to design this thermal energy storage system so that we can perennially get the hot water to be maintained at temperature of 180 degrees centigrade, so that we can get a higher coefficient of performance of around 1.5. So with that, this entire project was envisaged. So you can see that we are having solar collectors, of course, and then ultimately the energy which we are obtaining from the sun, like through the fluid, through the heat transfer fluid, we pass it on to this thermal energy storage, and then we keep it perennially, and whenever it is required we tap it, and then we finally get it passed through the mechanism of solar absorption air conditioner, and which helps us to keep the building at the desired temperature level. So basically this is a non-conventional type of system which we are speaking about. Now the chiller loop, this is the chiller loop. Whatever the cold water which is coming, it comes out around say 12 degrees centigrade. Now the chiller loop heat transfer is basically governed by this thermal energy storage device, which comes to this absorption chiller on the side of the condenser or the generator. So as I told, the condenser side will be having the generator side of that absorption chiller. So pretty much the performance of the chiller loop will be governed by how much amount of water and at what temperature we supply that water to this absorption chiller. And the minimum and maximum temperatures of this inlet water, the hot water, which is to be given as supply to this absorption chiller, as I told, will be maintained between 140 degrees centigrade to 180 degrees centigrade. When I'm speaking about thermal energy storage devices, so there are various ways to classify this thermal energy storage device. One very common way of classifying it is on the basis of the temperature. So basically we say that there are three distinct temperature range in which we can keep this thermal energy storage, on the basis of which we can classify them. The one which is known as the low temperature thermal energy storage, another one which is known as the medium temperature thermal energy storage, and the third one which is known as the high temperature thermal energy storage. So as an engineer, I think I will be quantifying it because we love numbers. So when I'm speaking about low temperature thermal energy storage, so if something is say less than 100 degrees centigrade, so from say 30, 40 to 100 degrees centigrade, if you want to store the energy, if you want to store the thermal energy in the form of say thermal battery, if you are constructing thermal battery, then it is known as low temperature thermal energy storage. Now if you are storing, if some way or the other we require the temperature or we require the thermal energy to be stored at a temperature of say 150 degrees centigrade to up to 270 degrees centigrade, so that comes under the medium temperature thermal energy storage. So our study will be more or less following this medium temperature thermal energy storage device design. And then comes the higher one, like if you go beyond 350 degrees centigrade, beyond 350 degrees centigrade, everything whatever we design for this thermal energy storage device, it is known as the high temperature thermal energy storage. And again, in high temperature thermal energy storage, there are some which are quite high. For example, if you want to store energy in sand, like silica, if you want to store energy in sand, so silica is generally having a melting point of say around 1200 to 1300 degrees centigrade. So at that temperature, if you want to store the energy and if you want to tap the energy from the thermal battery, then that is sometimes known as ultra high thermal energy storage device or ultra high thermal energy storage battery. In fact, we are working on that side also, but today my whole talk will be concentrating on this medium temperature range thermal energy storage device, which ranges from as I told, 150 to around 270 300 degrees centigrade. So I think you will be aware of how thermal energy storage systems are means planned for or designed. So the basis is, one is the sensible heat component and another one is the latent heat component. Of course, when we are speaking about latent heat component, by virtue of the amount of energy which is stored per unit volume, which is also known as the energy density. So if we are going for latent heat type of device, then in that case it is quite high. The energy stored per unit volume is quite high, or the energy density is quite high. So if we want to have that type of mechanism where you can stuff energy per unit volume very highly, then in that case we always envisage to design those thermal energy storage system which are having this phase change material or latent heat energy storage, which are to be designed in those areas where only the phase changes, but by virtue of that change of phase only, it will be means releasing the energy or it will be absorbing the energy, keeping the temperature of the system constant. Basically, we say that it is an isothermal condition in which this phase change material or this latent heat energy storage system works. However, it is quite hypothetical to say that we can maintain the temperature of a particular will be varying, will be quite less, and that's how we can say that within that bandwidth, if the temperature is means varying, and if we can somehow or the other, by virtue of the release of energy when the phase is changing from say solid to liquid, and by virtue of that absorption of energy when the phase is changing back from liquid to solid, if we can maintain that mechanism, then that's how the latent heat thermal energy storage system can be devised. And the most common phase change material which we encounter in our day-to-day life is water. So water, we know, from ice to liquid water, and then subsequently from liquid water to steam. But yeah, and we say that in our thermodynamics, you all will agree, we say that they are the pure substances, and that's how we model our all means devices on the basis of the thermodynamics of properties of pure substance. But water is having certain limitations, because we know that means in terms of the space which the water will be taking will be quite high as compared to that of some other phase change material. So the phase change material which I'm speaking about, they are also means of that classification which changes from solid to liquid and then from liquid to gas, but not water. Some chemical substances, means I'm just indicating on the organic type of phase change material, or some inorganic substances like the salts, hydrated salts, or some means metallic salts like sodium nitrate, potassium nitrate, which in proper combination, if you are utilizing and attempting to store the energy in the form of this latent heat energy storage system, they work very well. One important thing which I want to speak about this utilization of this latent heat energy storage system is that, irrespective of it is having a very high energy density, and that makes it quite lucrative offer, like it makes it quite lucrative to utilize this latent heat energy storage system in comparison to that of any sensible heat energy storage system. The biggest example to make you convinced this one is that if you are seeing any sort of like traditional buildings, say the temples which are being built historically, say the Humayun tomb or even the Taj Mahal, you can see that they are huge thermal masses. How they are huge thermal masses? They are huge lumped stones which are utilized, and that way also we can store the thermal energy into it, and then we can again attempt to utilize it or release it after some time. So there can be a huge thermal lag which we can generate by utilizing huge thermal mass. But and that way also we can maintain the room to be in condition. Like if you are going to those historical buildings, you can see that when you are visiting them during summers, it will be bit colder than what you are actually feeling outside that building. And if you are visiting them during winters, it will be at bit higher temperature, which is much more comfortable than what you are having outside to be in the chilled condition. So that way or the other, you can see that if we can some way or the other maintain this thermal mass of a particular system, then we can again come up with those temperatures, those comfort range where we actually want to reach when we are designing a particular air conditioning system. But the limitation is that now we don't have that luxury to have such big buildings which were there in the ancient times. And there comes the utilization of this phase change material, which I told that the amount of energy which it can store per unit volume is very high, and that by virtue of that we can, if some way or the other, utilize those phase change material in the same buildings which where we are living, and we can get the same type of effect what we used to get in our traditional building, which are also having a huge thermal mass, or we can say that thermal inertia. So it is nothing, it is just the product of the mass of that particular material in which you are storing the thermal energy times the specific heat or the heat storage capacity of that particular material. So some way or the other, you can increase the physical mass of that particular system, or you can increase the heat storage capacity of that particular system. So you will see that this phase change material, they are having very good thermal heat storage capacity or thermal storage capacity. So by virtue of that also, we are actually going to that point where we are attempting to increase the thermal mass of the system. So this is how this phase change material works. Okay, so now as I told that means this phase change material, they are having good thermal mass, so it can store appreciable amount of energy when we are designing the thermal battery. And if we are saying that how it works on the basis of the heat of absorption which it absorbs, or heat which it releases by virtue of the change of phase through which it undergoes. And then it can actually absorb the thermal energy, or it can actually release the thermal energy. Of course, I have given that it is having very high energy storage density, and I've quantified it to be say in terms of the sensible heat storage which the phase change material can store. It will be around 5 to 10 times higher than that of the sensible heat storage, which actually stores energy by virtue of the difference in the temperature. So and then the third one, which I am saying, that it stores energy at least, if not in a constant temperature, in a small bandwidth, the temperature energy is getting stored or it gets released. And of course, this latent heat storage system, they can be available in wide range of temperatures. So starting from temperature, say if you are utilizing in for building applications, like if you are utilizing in the walls, so definitely you will be looking for temperatures say from 25 degrees centigrade to around say 42 degrees centigrade, if I'm speaking about Delhi, like the maximum temperature which we generally get in the month of May. So in that temperature also, you will be having some candidates or some family members of this phase change material. And as I am speaking today about the intermediate temperature storage of say 140 to 180 degrees centigrade, in that temperature range also you will be having the materials. And if you want to store it at a very high temperature of, say, as I told, if you are utilizing silica like sand, then at a temperature of 1200 1300 degrees centigrade it melts. So at that temperature range also you can store the thermal energy by virtue of the change in the phases without having any perturbation or any effect on the temperature. So you can see the versatility with which this latent heat thermal energy storage system works. Of course, it is having a very good heat storage capacity also. Now let me just tell something on the negative side of this latent heat thermal energy storage system. This latent heat thermal energy storage system, of course, it is having a very good heat storage capacity, but when it comes to the thermal conductivity of that material, if means basically I'm speaking about the Prandtl number. You being from chemical engineering or mechanical engineering side, you will understand what I'm speaking about. Like if we want to see the heat dissipative capacity of that particular material, we go with the Prandtl number. So in Prandtl number, we know that one side it is the heat storage capacity and another side it is the thermal conductivity. So if thermal conductivity is poor, then also it is not a very good thing, because it may store the energy at whatever level you want it, but when you want to tap it, for example, you are storing the energy during the solar time during the morning when you are having good insolation, but if you can't tap that energy during night time at that efficiency with which it is storing it, then it is of no use, because if there is a sluggishness, if the time constant is not good for that particular thermal battery which you are envisaging or designing, then it is of no use. So thermal conductivity should also be very good for this thermal battery which you are designing, which of course is not the scenario when you are utilizing this latent heat energy storage system. So you can see that the range what I have given, sometimes it is quite low, more than that. So it is quite low, like in terms of SI unit, it is around 0.4 when I'm speaking about the thermal conductivity. And because of this, the sluggishness in heat absorbing or retrieval is quite high. Like it can't means absorb it quicker, like the time constant of that particular appropriate or not very good. So there are challenges which comes with this utilization of the thermal battery when we are utilizing some sort of latent heat energy storage system. And the biggest challenge is regarding this sluggishness, which comes because of one of the critical thermophysical property of that material, which is known as the thermal conductivity. So then what we do, this is one of the challenge. Of course, we are saying that it is having a good heat storage capacity. We want to take it, but on the other side, we don't have the other characteristic, which is a good thermal conductivity. Like the diffusivity of that particular substance, thermal diffusivity is not very good. So of course, then we will be finding various mechanisms, which again you would have studied or you would have seen sometime or the other. There are various physical ways through which we can do that. Some of them which I have exemplified over here. Of course, you would have heard about the extended surface or the fins, which very much when we are doing our first classes of heat transfer, we encounter with fins. So this is one of the mechanism, or this is one of the systems which should be some way or the other introduced when we are actually utilizing this latent heat thermal energy storage system, or latent PCM, phase change material. So some way or the other, we have to increase the surface area physically, so that the amount of energy which is to be dissipated from that particular thermal battery can be appropriately enhanced or can be increased. So there are other mechanisms also. So you can see that some of the things which I have given over here are extended surface, which we name as fins. Then and nowadays we come up with some sort of like nano enhanced phase change material. If some way or the other you can introduce nanoparticles with the phase change material which you are envisaging or planning to utilize for your thermal battery, then also some way or the other you can means increase the thermal conductivity, the equivalent thermal conductivity of that particular compound which you are making by mixing the phase change material with the nanoparticles, and that way also you can enhance the heat transfer from that particular thermal battery which you are utilizing. There is one more new technique which actually means with DRDO I was working on that, like if we can impregnate the phase change material, any phase change material, any wax you can speak about. If some way or the other we can impregnate this phase change material in the honeycombed structure of any metallic or non-metallic structure, like we started with graphite, we made graphite honeycomb structure and we impregnated the phase change material into it, then also the thermal conductivity increases. Now we started with non-metallic graphite and then we went for copper. Copper means the metallic honeycomb structure, and again we impregnated the phase change material into it just to counteract this lower or very feeble thermal conductivity which that phase change material was having. So this is quite challenging, and still people are dabbling with it. I know that people have understood extended structures or fins to their core, like that we know from our basics of heat transfer. In fact, nanoparticles or nanomaterials being utilized in any heat exchanger with the fluid, that is also quite common. It is going at least from last 15 years. But when we are trying to design this thermal battery and how those things can be brought into this new technology of designing the thermal battery is quite challenging, and that's where you will find lot of niche or lot of research gaps which are to be filled when we are actually working with this phase change material for designing any thermal battery. So I think I have covered more or less everything in this slide. If not, you can ask me. One more thing, yeah, the one which I have not covered is the micro encapsulation. So what happens sometimes, this as I was telling, that this phase change material, like if you are taking wax, this is not means very much conducting. So if you can some way or the other encapsulate it in some conducting material, like if you are making the core and the shell, the core being the phase change material which you are planning to utilize for storing the energy, and the shell by means some sort of conducting material, if you can make the sheath or the shell of that phase change material, then also you can enhance the thermal conductivity of the phase change material. And of course now means one more challenge, if you are saying about this phase change material, if means I want to means explain about it, is the solubility within the water. You know that most of these waxes are highly hydrophobic, means they don't mix with water. So if we want to use it in any sort of heat exchanger, then it will get coagulated one side and the liquid will go on the other side, means they will repel each other. But you want them to be very uniformly distributed within the fluid. So how you can do that? This micro encapsulation can help you in that way also, because that sheath or the shell which you are preparing for encapsulating the phase change material, you can make it hydrophilic, and then it will be well mixing with the water. Like we are making we are designing some building materials in which, again, when we are trying to utilize this phase change material with the cement, when we are mixing the cement, sand and water, basically in civil engineering it is called the concrete, the constituent which it makes in proper proportions which we mix it. But and then when we are utilizing this phase change material, the phase change material goes on one side and this concrete mixture, it goes on the other side, and then it can be questioning the structure of the strength of the structure which you are making, like the walls which you are preparing. So in that case also, if you can some way or the other make it hydrophilic by introducing some sort of water miscible or water soluble sheath, then in that case also that will be a very win-win situation when you are designing this type of PCM based or latent heat based thermal battery or system. These are the literatures. I think I will not go in details. So means I will say that the study has been started, say somewhere in 2012 or something, when we started understanding how the concept of thermal batteries to be envisaged. In fact, if we are speaking about India, then the roadmap of our energy storage, it has been designated, or it has been constructed or formulated by NITI Aayog only in 2019. So you can see that we are in a very fertile area where this thermal energy storage research can be quite lucrative, and the challenges which are there to utilize it as storage system are quite high in terms of the thermophysical properties, which I am saying, in terms of having robust and at the same time cost optimized. Because if I'm speaking about nanoparticles, the first thing which comes in my mind is the techno-economics which is involved in utilizing those nanoparticles. They are not very good. Like you can have gold nanoparticles, but what is the feasibility of utilizing that gold nanoparticles to enhance the thermal conductivity of the phase change material which you are utilizing? So yeah, it is quite fertile, and I think I will not go in details of the literature which I have collected. So we'll directly go to the research gap. Yeah. So by doing this literature review, we attempted to find the niche and where we can actually intervene, irrespective of the enhancement of the thermal conductivity. That is one of the inherent problem of this type of thermal energy storage system, or the thermal battery which we are speaking. There were very less literature which are reported for this temperature range, for this medium temperature range. That's what I have mentioned over here. So in this temperature range, if someone wants to design a thermal battery so that you can make a green air conditioner, if you are some way or the other correlating it with the non-conventional air conditioner, you don't have that type of technology in the market. And then other things, what we found, that again this employing of the fins in a very economical or effective way to improve the thermal performance of this latent heat energy storage system has also not been explored, especially for this temperature range, for this medium temperature range. It was not there. And of course, this enhancement of the thermal conductivity utilizing nanoparticles, and what are the various challenges which we get when we are utilizing this nanoparticles. It gets coagulated, as I told, it gets coagulated or gets concentrated on one side, which actually does not help us to get an effective enhanced thermal conductivity for which we are actually utilizing it. So what are the challenges which we can face when we are utilizing this nanoparticles? That was also there, which was not very appropriately studied. And of course, as I have told, that by increasing the thermal conductivity, means you are actually increasing one mode of heat transfer, which is conduction, the basic mode of heat transfer, which is conduction, because of this nano dispersion. But what happens to the other mode of heat transfer? Because when we are speaking about this phase change material to store the energy, basically means it is changing the phase by virtue of maintaining the temperature. It is changing the phase, and that changing of phase is actually releasing energy or absorbing energy. But when we are changing the phase, then we are actually coming up to one more thermophysical property which can help us, or which can inhibit one mode of heat transfer, which is convection. Because viscosity will get affected, because first it is solid, and once you start extracting, means once you start giving heat to it, then it becomes liquid. So that change of phase is actually having an impact on the heat transfer which is happening by convection. So how this means viscosity is actually deteriorating one type of heat transfer over another. That was also one of the research gap which was taken further. And then we found that there were very less experimental correlations which can correlate this thermophysical properties of heat storage capacity, viscosity at different concentration of the nanoparticles. Like when we are mixing nanoparticles by mass, and so that we can work on the effective thermal conductivity of that particular phase change material, that type of correlation was not available. So these were some of the things which we wanted to study. And of course, as I am saying, that on on those two modes of heat transfer, like the conduction and convection, so you can see that one becomes counteracting for the other. So if some way or the other we can attempt to get to that point where the modes of heat transfers are not are not coming on the way of each other, are not getting compromised, then in that case, what sort of shapes should be utilized for this thermal battery? that was also one of the things which was not being studied. So these were some of the research gaps which we found, and on the basis of those research gaps we found that okay, we can set out our objectives, or we can get to some sort of outcomes which we are planning to get. So the first thing which we found, which should be taken as one of the objectives, is the characterization of those phase change material. Why I will say this characterization of phase change material is important? Because when you are purchasing this phase change material, of course we have purchased and sometimes we have synthesized it in our lab. So first time when the commercially available phase change material are being purchased, you get a certificate of its thermal conductivity, its heat storage capacity, its viscosity when it is melting. Basically, you get the Prandtl number of that particular phase change material which you are purchasing. But all those phase change material certifications, they are done for laboratory standard or a particular temperature range in which it is functioning. So that is one of the drawbacks, because when you are actually utilizing that phase change material, maybe you will be not working in that temperature range where it has been tested or where it has been certified. So the first thing which I thought is very important when we are designing this thermal energy storage system is that we should characterize all the thermophysical properties locally at our place. So that was the first thing which we did. And of course we have differential scanning calorimeter, which you will be knowing. I think I will be discussing some of the results of that DSC which we did. Not only differential scanning calorimeter, we tested everything. We did the testing of the viscosity of that phase change material, thermal conductivity of that phase change material, to find out that is it within the range of the reported value which was given by the certification. If not, then what is the thing? One more important thing about this designing of thermal battery or thermal energy storage system, latent thermal energy storage system, is its cyclability. How it is important? Because I'm saying that it is absorbing heat and then it is going to the liquid phase, and again we are extracting the energy from it, it is going to its solid phase. So you can see that there is a cycle through which this thermal energy storage system or the thermal battery goes. It is quite important, because if completely you will not be able to get it to the solid phase when you are extracting the heat out of it, if completely it will be not going to its liquid phase when you are actually providing enthalpy to it, then it is of no use. Then basically it becomes a sensible heat storage system, which we are already working on. But our aim is to get more energy per unit volume, or to have this means advantage of utilizing the phase change material for designing our thermal energy storage system. So cyclability is quite important. And in cyclability, what we do the testing of that phase change material over a period of say 100 cycles, 500 cycles. Sometimes we go up to 5,000 cycles. And then we test whether again the phase change material is retaining its behavior of becoming solid and liquid after those 5,000 cycles or not. By rule of thumb, it is said that if the phase change material can withstand this cyclability test, then in that case our phase change material system or the thermal battery will be functioning say over a period of next 10 years. Of course, techno-economics is important, because if you are making something and it is not having its effectiveness with which you are making it after 1 year, then it is of no use. You have to scrap it. So this cyclability test was also done. I think I have not shown the results, but we have done that in my publications. You can see that how the cyclability test has been done. And by rule of thumb, it is said that if that phase change material can withstand means 1,000 cycles, then at least we can imagine the system to be robust enough, well functioning for at least next 10 years. So that is how this testing is being done. So first thing what we did, we characterized it, and then after characterization we actually made an in-house experimental setup. It is more like a thermal battery only. I will be showing you what we have done. And then not only we have made that in-house experimental prototype of the thermal battery, we first designed it utilizing CFD, because it was more like analysis based design. First we analyzed it whether it is working or not, what are the attributes which should be maintained for this thermal battery which we are designing, and by keeping all the attributes of enhancing the thermal conductivity, utilizing fins, by utilizing means nanoparticles. Here we have used graphene nano platelets. Means sometimes it is called platelets, and here's means we have written it as plates. So yeah, GNP is something which we have utilized to enhance the thermal conductivity of that system. We have first studied it computationally, and then after getting satisfactory result only, we went ahead and designed it physically, like the prototype of the experimental result which we have done. So of course, as I told, we evaluated the enhanced viscosity also, and then we have seen how the natural convection and conduction, the two competing criteria, comes on each other in terms of the heat transfer. That also we have studied, and then we have seen how this melting enhancement, when we are having a combination of both. First we have taken separately, and then we have combined both the graphene nanoplates and the thermal conductivity, and then we have seen how this combination is actually affecting or actually enhancing the heat transfer, or is there any negative effect on it. Of course, the results will say that some of the things were negative, and then we have gone for the shape factor, as I told, to not have any suppression of one form of heat transfer on the another. We have gone for a kind of change in the shape of the thermal battery. That also we have studied. The last one what we did is combination of phase change material in cascaded way. Like if you are layering the phase change material, say if it is a cylindrical type of thermal battery, if you are layering it radially, and one thing you can do, you can layer it on the circumference, like either way. So was there any effect on the way this thermal battery was performing, or what is the impact on the performance of that particular system? That also we have studied. So these were some of the objectives which we attempted to address. So I will be taking one by one each one of them. So as I told that differential scanning calorimetry is quite important to find out what sort of heat storage capacity that particular phase change material is having. So the phase change material which we have taken, as I was telling, that the metallic salts, they can be utilized. It's not the organic one, it is the inorganic one which we utilized over here, the binary eutectic salt. And again I have taken one organic one also, you will see mannitol, it is sugar. So different phase change materials we have taken. So we did the characterization of all the phase change material utilizing differential scanning calorimeter, utilizing thermal conductivity meter, utilizing viscosity, and of course utilizing density meter. So how this differential scanning calorimeter works, I think you will be knowing it. So by gauging the difference in the amount of enthalpy or the heat which is required to raise the temperature of the sample, per unit rise of temperature of the sample is measured in comparison to a pan which is not having any material into it. By virtue of this comparison of the two pans, in which one we are having the phase change material whose heat storage capacity is to be measured, in contrast to that of the empty pan where only the temperature rise is happening, and then we do the calculation to measure how much amount of heat is required to change the phase from solid to liquid, and again how much amount of heat is to be extracted from that system, because we do the entire hysteresis of changing the phase from solid to liquid, and then again by extracting the heat from liquid to solid. So that time you have to use some sort of cryogenic so that you can maintain the temperature to its lowest possible, so that it can freeze down. And that way I think means I will not go into details of how this measurement is done. So it can be it can be seen offline, or you can see my papers how this has been done. So basically we used like this was all means our brainchild, like how we can mix it uniformly, and then means all we have melted it so that all the moisture can be removed, so that we can get a perfect binary eutectic by the combination of these two salts, like lithium nitrate and potassium chloride, which are utilized in their proportion of 50% each. So that's how we did it. I think you understand what is eutectic. So in it. So basically, these are some of the representative results of the differential scanning calorimetry which we have conducted over this lithium nitrate and KCl binary eutactic. So you can see that the onset of melting starts at 164, and then finally the peak reaches at 168. And when it is going the other way, the onset of solidification starts at 159, and finally it reaches its peak at 157. However, by virtue of what a standard phase change material, if it is maintained at a constant temperature, then it should again reach the onset for melting and solidification exactly at the same temperature range, but it is not happening that way. And by that only you will be knowing that what are the inefficiencies which you will be encountering when you are actually designing that thermal battery. So this was quite important, and which was not reported anywhere. Like when we are taking those salts, we were not understanding that how they will be behaving when we are making the eutactic, binary eutactic, and attempting to utilize it for our requirement of 140 degrees centigrade to 180 degrees centigrade, that energy storage criteria of temperature. So on that basis, we found this results to be quite interesting. Anyways, now we proceeded further. As I told that we made a prototype thermal battery over in our lab at means IIT Delhi only. So it consisted of an inner pipe. So that inner pipe was utilized to charge or discharge. Like we were having the means shell type of arrangement, core and shell type of arrangement. The tube which was the core, it was having the hot air being blown through it, and then we had this outer means structure or the shell where we were embedding or packing all the phase change material which we wanted to melt, and see that how the proficiency or the strength of that charging and discharging of that phase change material is having. So basically there is one term which is very important in energy storage technology. It is known as the turnaround efficiency. So that turnaround efficiency is quite critical when you are actually designing any energy storage device, irrespective of electrical or thermal. So we are designing thermal battery, thermal energy storage device. Again, turnaround efficiency is one of the important criteria to find the efficacy of that particular material which is utilized for designing this type of device. So yeah, we tested those things also. So this is the arrangement. Like we have utilized helical wire which is coiled over a means rectangular mica sheet, of course, to not have any sort of electrical means accident. So we used mica sheet. This is very common thing. So and the input power, basically this entire prototype was of the range of 600 kilojoule capacity. So we maintained it in that way, this latent heat storage system which we designed. And then how we can vary this input power, we were having a variable transformer, we were having a variac, so that we can get the power whatever is required. Basically that power is utilized to heat the coil electrical heater or the coil electrical heater, and then we will be utilizing one centrifugal blower, so that the hot air can be charged to that phase change material through the concentric annulus core and the shell through which the heat transfer is happening. Of course, like we also estimated the heat loss which is happening, because if we are trying to estimate the turnaround efficiency or the efficacy of that particular thermal battery, so we have to quantify how much amount of heat loss is happening. So that also we quantified, and we found that it was within the range of say 3.5% to 6.5%. This is the arrangement. Means we are quite like inquisitive to see how the temperature variation is happening, or how the front, like the solid front or the liquid front of that phase change material is means behaving. So for that we had different locations over which we have embedded our thermocouples. Of course, it is an intrusive type of measurement, like in fact means that is the only way to go for to get more information about the front, the liquid or the solid front, whatever way you want to means imagine it. So basically this is the point through which the hot air was blown, and this pink color are those points through which the phase change material was stuffed in. So you can see that after we started the experiment, we found that how much time and what is the temperature variation, like with the time what is the temperature variation and how it is reaching the asymptotic limit. So for that we compared it with the numerical data. I will be discussing about the CFD which we have done. So for that we compared it with the numerical data, that average temperature which we were obtaining from all these thermocouples, the bulk temperature which we are obtaining from all these thermocouples, and pretty much whatever we have modeled through our CFD analysis, they well matched with the experimental values which we obtained from this particular system, within the agreement of around 6% of maximum error and a coefficient of correlation of 0.98. So yeah, then now after means getting a proper match between our CFD and the between the experimental and the numerical results, we then started plotting that again the temperature versus time for all the temperature sensing locations individually, and you will see that after certain point it reaches an asymptotic limit. Of course, it is that point after which you can say that it is storing or it is releasing the energy, means in terms of the latent heat, like basically it is working as latent heat thermal energy storage medium after that point. It is not during this gradient, and of course this is the time after which it is reaching the asymptotic limit. So again we saw, or we estimated the coefficient of correlation for each of those constituent temperature locations where we were measuring the temperature, as means there were some initial experiments which were done by some scientists. So we have taken those things into criteria, and then we tried to estimate how the temperature variation was happening. So in this first part, what we did a proper characterization of the thermophysical properties, say the heat storage capacity of that particular eutectic mixture which was designed for making the thermal energy storage device. And then we estimated what is the peak and the onset liquefying as well as the solidification temperature. We also evaluated the heat storage capacity of that eutectic system. And finally, we designed an experimental prototype which we utilized subsequently for doing more interventions, which I will be showing in the subsequent slides. So the next one, as I was discussing about, we attempted to enhance the heat transfer through this latent heat, cylindrical latent heat energy storage system. And how we enhanced it? First, we utilized graphene nanoplatelets, and then we utilized fins, and then in combination of GNP and fins, we saw that what should be the concentration of the GNP in that particular phase change material, so that we can get an adequate heat transfer from that thermal battery. So that was the next part. So again, I think I will not go in details. I think I have made that how I have made you convinced that how the novelty of this particular system is. So of course, when we are discussing about fins, again the convective and the conductive part comes into picture as the modes of heat transfer. Means they become competing to each other. So means we can't have a point where we are eventually increasing the fin height to its extreme, because after some time we know that if we are increasing the fin height, then it means that is the basics of fin, it does not have any effect. Rather it will be counteracting the heat transfer which it has to happen because of the inhibition of the convective currents through which the heat transfer will be taking place. So that optimum height of the fin was also established through this study. And then we actually compared the various modes of heat transfer which is happening, like the convective and the conductive modes of heat transfer which is happening in the actual plant. Like we somehow we got one double effect solar absorption system which is actually there in somewhere in the Europe. So we got those data, and then we tried to match it with our experimental results by scaling it down, and at the same time the numerical analysis which we have done, we tried to match it with that part also. So that is also means shown over here. So this is the arrangement through which, as I was telling, that the phase change material for comparison with the actual absorption chiller which is utilizing this type of arrangement. Of course they don't have this arrangement in a way where fins and the graphene nanoplates are being utilized, but we attempted to compare it, means to see when it was asymptotically compared with the actual system, and this was the arrangement which we have utilized. So you can see that the phase change material here we have taken is D-mannitol. D-mannitol is a kind of sugar. So and that is also a phase change material, and for enhancing the thermal conductivity we have taken graphene nanoplates. So in combination, in different concentration, graphene nanoplates were introduced in this phase change material, and then we again introduced fins into it, and then we tried to see how this effect of graphene nanoplates over the phase change material and the effect of this fins over the phase change material can be utilized to design a perfect thermal storage battery for this particular application of green air conditioners. So these are the CFD analysis which we have done. Of course, we started with no fin, where we are only having the mannitol, and then we have introduced the fins. Eventually, we were increasing the height of the fins. As I told that till certain point there is meaning of increasing the height of the fins, beyond which it is not having any impact. So we wanted to find out like what should be the optimum fin height where the convective heat transfer or the convective currents don't get intervened with the conduction which is happening through the fin, through the CFD analysis. So that also we did, and we found that at 3/4 of the fin height, the heat transfer due to convection reduces and only conduction prevails. So the minimum height which we should keep should be around 50% of the annulus. Like annulus means the radius of the outside, and the difference between the radius of the outside and the inside through which the hot air is blowing. So the minimum height was 50% of the annulus or the annular space of the fin at which the convection occurs very smoothly, beyond which if you are increasing, then the convection gets inhibited, and that will not be a very good situation where we are utilizing fins to dissipate the heat. So that was being found through this CFD analysis. Then what we introduced the graphene nanoplates also to increase the efficiency of this charging and discharging of the thermal battery, and we found that by introducing this graphene nanoplates, by this dual behavior of having the graphene nanoplates with the fins, the charging rates of course got increased. Like the rate at which the system was getting charged of course got increased. And then we also found that the melt front, it gets developed on the heated wall and moves from top to bottom. Of course it will be happening in that way only, means from top to bottom. And then one more observation we found was that this fins which we are utilizing as the thermal enhancer or the heat transfer enhancer, beyond certain point, beyond certain height, it actually acts as individual heat sources inside the PCM. Like it acts as thermal bridge, which is not a very good situation. So we wanted to not have that situation where this fins were actually acting as the heat sources inside the PCM. So then we started seeing that what is the effect beyond which this heat source of the fin can be studied in a way that it is having a positive effect. So we as I was telling that we introduced this graphene nanoplates in different proportion, like 1%, 3%, and 5% by volume, so as to see that how much reduction in the melting time is happening, or how much reduction in this discharging is happening when we are introducing this graphene nanoplates. And when we are having this fins, how much effect in the reduction of the energy storage device is happening by having the fin heights from 25% of the annulus to the 3/4 of the annulus structure. How much effect is happening on the melting time, that also we studied. And then in combination of the GNP and the optimized fin, like the optimized fin, whatever we have achieved, as I told that between 50 to 75%, above 50% it is good, but beyond 75% it is not good. So that optimization, after finding that optimization, the optimized fin, how this reduction in the melting point can be reached utilizing graphene nanoplates in their various proportions by volume, that also was studied. So these are some of the highlights, like there was a 3% reduction in the melting time which is observed when we are eventually increasing the fin height from half to 3/4 of the R minus R of that annulus, capital R minus small r of that annulus. And the temperature of course drops exponentially with the fin length, which we always know. And this increased in fin height actually requires more material, which is making it quite bulkier without having any effect on the heat transfer which is happening, or which is required for dissipating the heat from the system. And the melting time, if we are having a combination of this optimized fin and graphene nanoplates, then this melting time is actually getting reduced by 68% when we are having a combination of this GNP and optimized fin. So this was one of the observation. And as I told that the optimum fin height was found to be from 50% of the annular should be utilized, and that was what we envisaged from utilization of this type of structure for designing our thermal battery. So you can see that this holistically gives the utilization of the fins, utilization of the graphene nanoplates in combination with each other to find the optimum fin size, which is around 50% of the annular size, so that the natural convection is also not getting inhibited by increasing the fin height. And of course, if we are increasing the fin height beyond 3/4 of the R minus R, then in that case those fins actually start acting as heat sources, which is also not a very good thing. So one important finding which we concluded from this is that fin system, which is not having any GNP being imbibed into that phase change material, they performs better in combination in contrast to that system when we are having those nano composite system being introduced in the phase change material. So, and then one more thing was that exceeding the GNP volume fraction. Of course, if you are exceeding the GNP volume fraction, then it will be actually having an hamper on the natural convection which is happening for the heat transfer to be taking place during the charging and the discharging, which is also not very advisable to explore. So these are some of the things. The next was to see the efficient utilization of this latent heat energy storage system in combination with fins by incorporating the shape factor. So till now what we were doing, it was a cylindrical structure which we have introduced, which we have designed, but ultimately we started seeing that can there be any other shape in which the combination of this conduction and convection which is happening through this thermal energy storage battery can be enhanced. Of course, conical shape was introduced, like it is sometimes called the frustum of the cone, which was introduced. And then we started again seeing the same type of effect which we were looking for that cylindrical battery. And this were some of the research gap, like the geometric design of the storage system, which is means utilizing the natural convection advantageously has not been explored. Then the heat transfer enhancement techniques by utilizing the graphene nanoplates in combination to that of the fins were also not being explored. So this were again and again we did the means study of the thermophysical properties, as I told that at lab scale when we are getting it reported as certificate is not similar what we are actually getting in our systems when we are designing it. It is also done for this type of structure where the shape of the thermal battery was changed from cylindrical to a frustum of a cone, say conical. So this was the structure which we attempted to study, where means we have taken the effect of the conical arrangement and then tried to find out what is the effect in contrast to that of the cylindrical arrangement which we have started with. And then again we did all the combinations of mixing with graphene nanoplate for this latent heat energy storage system, introduced fins, and then again in combination of the both. So these were some of the means candidate solutions which we approached to study through this CFD analysis. So again, same attempt was done for the CFD analysis by mixing the graphene nanoplates in terms of 1%, 3%, and 5% by volume for this conical type of thermal battery. And these were some of the means observations which we found, that fins inside the phase change material means domain, it will be again acting as an individual heat source, which we found in our previous study also for the cylindrical type of thermal energy storage battery. But here what it happens, although it becomes a heat source, but because of this shape, conical shape, it diffuses the heat very quickly. So this is something which was quite interesting and quite on the positive side of changing the shape. And then the conical shape, of course, this conical structured latent heat energy storage system again reduces the melting time by more than 16% of its cylindrical counterpart. And then this conical design, what it does, it actually utilize how it increases the melt, how it reduces the melting time, or how this effectiveness happens. This is because of the utilization of the natural convection more effectively in this conical shape in contrast to that of the cylindrical shape. Of course, with that idea only we started it, and we found quite good results when we are introducing it. There is one more, as I was telling about the turnaround efficiency, another thing is the melting enhancement ratio of that particular thermal battery, which is quite important to understand. So you can see that what is this melting enhancement ratio. So you can see that when we are having different combinations of fin GNP and only GNP in different percentage by volume, with the comparison for the base cylinder where we are having the shape to be the cylindrical one. So you can see that there is an improvement in the total melting point, and that improvement will actually help us to understand that it is always better to have a conical type of thermal battery in comparison to that of a cylindrical arrangement. The enhancement ratio of the fin system for conical system with GNP is also being reported, which is around 45%. And of course, if we are utilizing only GNP, then there is a negative ratio of the negative melt enhancement ratio, which is not a very good thing to. So we should not use this GNP only with 1% volume. That's what we envisaged. And then finally, the conical shape of the latent heat storage system, it actually counteracts the adverse effects of adding GNP by improving convective heat transfer, which already we have discussed over here. The conical design enhances the natural convection effectively in contrast to that of its cylindrical counterpart. So I think I have discussed it in my previous slide. So that's what is in the summary. The last one is regarding cascading the system. Like when we are having two different phase change material which are used in tandem with each other in series, whether circumferentially or whether radially. Like you, I will show you how the arrangement is. So, is there any effect on the melting time, or is there any effect on the efficiency of turnaround efficiency of that particular thermal energy storage system or the thermal battery? So that also we tried to study. And in that one we have taken two phase change material. Here we have taken carnauba wax and high density polythene. So polyethylene, that was taken, and we attempted to utilize both of them, both of this phase change material in cascaded form. The structure I will be showing. So again we have done the thermal characterization utilizing this two particular phase change material at different ramp rates. Of course, ramp rate is also important, at which rate you are actually giving the heat, or at which rate the temperature of that particular phase change material is means changing. If people are here from CFD side, then you can some way or the other you can compare it with the grid independent study of that particular computational volume or the control volume. So this is also quite important, when at which rate we should characterize the system so that it becomes independent of the rate at which the heat is being given. So that also we have studied here for HDPE, high density polyethylene, and carnauba wax. And this is the arrangement which we have taken. You can see that one arrangement was putting one over the other circumferentially, and another one over the other radially. So there are the two cascaded system for carnauba wax and HDPE, which we have seen, or which we have studied to find out the significance of having cascaded system. Of course, cascaded systems are more stable as compared to that of a single PCM or single system latent heat storage system. But we wanted to see that how this can be affecting if we are arranging it in a different way. So we compared the utilization of this HDPE first in the order of their decreasing melting point, like HDPE first and then the carnauba wax, and the other one increasing melting point in the longitudinal as well as in the circumferential, in the radial manner. And then we have utilized only one HDP, one phase change material, which is quite similar to that our previous studies. And then we found that how this time is getting changed, the melting time is getting changed. So that was the observation which we found. And you can see that for a single system, single latent heat energy storage system, in comparison to that of a cascaded system, there was a 31% increase in the liquid fraction when we are comparing both of them. So and then we have just checked it for the longitudinal type, how the temperature variation is happening. I think these are the conclusions. I think I should go directly to the conclusions. So the cascaded system, of course, in comparison to that of the single phase change material system, works means outperforms. They works better. They work better. The total time of melting also for this cascaded system is judged, and it was found that it was around 5,000 seconds in comparison to that of the single system, single phase change material system, which was around 7,000 seconds. So there is a reduction of 31% in the melting time when we are speaking about the cascaded system. But when we are speaking about the placement, whether it is to be done longitudinally or it is to be done circumferentially or radially, the radial placement was found to be not so effective due to the increase in the melting time, and that melting time was quantified to be increased by around 104%. And the thermal performance of this latent heat energy storage system strongly depends on the accuracy with which the ramp rate is to be decided. As I told that whether you are increasing it by 1 degree centigrade per minute, or whether you are increasing it by 10 degrees centigrade, so it should be independent of that. So that was also concluded from this study, that how ramp rate is important to understand the actual efficiency of the thermal energy storage system which you are designing utilizing this phase change material. I think these are the overall conclusions. So again, I don't want to repeat them. So more or less shows the same thing which I have given for each section. So I think means I will. These are some of the publications which we got. Yeah, this was means one of the consortium project. As I told, it was being funded by some more slides which. Thank you for your attention, and hope you got.
Thank you, Dr. Dibakar. And now session is open for the question answers. So participants, if you have any question, please come forward. Okay, so there is one question
Yeah, sure.
from Jamin Kumar Bhatt. He says that, is there any IPR in it?
Uh, I patent.
Yeah, is there any IPR in it? That is his question.
Yeah, I think means we were planning to have one, but still we are in the mode of filing it. But it is not exactly for this scenario where we are having phase change material being mixed with nanoparticles. It was just for only the phase change material to be utilized in building applications. The means low temperature thermal energy storage system, so that we are filing at this moment. So for this particular study we have not filed any patent. So all the papers are available on the means if you go to my website you can get it, and if you want, if you are not able to download it, you can send me an email so I can just send those papers to you. As such, there is no IPR which we have filed for this particular thing, but of course we are doing that for our another study which is again similar to this, but not this nano enhanced fish chain material for this particular application of air conditioning system which we have designed, a non-conventional air conditioning system.
Okay. So another question from Siva Kumar. He asked that, can you compare the thermal energy storage system with electrical storage system in terms of efficiency?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Like I think means I will go back to my basics of thermodynamics, which I think everyone will be agreeing also. So basically, if we see in terms of thermodynamics, if we are going to first law of thermodynamics, it states that we are basically having two forms of energy. One is heat and another one is work. The entire scenario or whatever we are designing, it is only the interconvertibility of this heat and work. Either you are converting work to heat, high grade energy to low grade energy, or you are converting low grade energy heat to work. Now, when we are speaking about the efficiencies of this thermal energy storage system, and when we are trying to compare it with the electrical energy storage system, of course, the efficiency, if we are seeing in terms of the losses, then electrical energy storage system will have very less losses. It will be having means if you are speaking about the batteries, then it will be much better as compared to that of the thermal energy storage efficiencies or the thermal batteries. But the point is how you are storing energy and what way you are utilizing it. If it is utilization of the energy from electrical to electrical, then I will say that okay, you can go for electrical energy storage system. But is it always that? Because I have seen certain scenarios where people are storing the energy in the form of electrical energy, which is the highest grade energy, which is sometimes called the exergy of the system, and then they are converting it into I square R to heat the thing, like for heating, for doing some sort of things which are related with thermal energy. So in that case, I think it is not a very wise thing to do. So maybe you can improvise on the efficiencies of your thermal battery by, as today we discussed some of the things, by having a proper like a combination of say nanoparticles and increasing the surface area. Then in that case, the efficiency of that thermal battery can also be enhanced. Then it can be compared. But I will say still that means to store energy in the form of lower quality energy is much better than to store energy in the form of higher quality energy if you are utilizing back in the lower form. Like if you are converting electrical to heat, then it is not a very good thing. So it is better to store it in the form of heat and then utilize it in the form of heat rather than going from the other side.
Okay. Sir, there is another question from Khadija Priyan. How can we analyze thermal comfort in buildings?
Okay. Yeah, like this is entirely different. Means actually, I have not gone into that much details on the building side. So there are means there are a lot of protocols. One is by American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning. In fact, means for India, we are having Energy Conservation Building Code, which is being formulated by Bureau of Indian Standards (BIS). So by rule of thumb, they say that if we can maintain the control volume or the room at a temperature, at a dry bulb temperature of say around 25 degrees centigrade with a relative humidity between say 40 to 50%, then a normal person, a healthy person will be thermally feeling themselves comfortable. So that's how, if you can maintain it by utilizing some passive means, by non-conventional air conditioning, which I discussed today, only the storage part I have discussed, or even by active means also, if you are utilizing some sort of vapor compression cycle, if we can maintain that temperature and relative humidity, so we are means in the thermal comfort regime of any human being, a healthy human being.
Okay. Sir, there is one question from my side.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
yeah, so when we are developing these PCM materials, so and then we are putting it into the building, so sandwich type of structure you have shown somewhere. So what is the one thing is the stability and longevity, because we cannot over the time change it.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So how do we take care of that?
That's what I told, like thermal stability is quite important. That's why before actually fixing it in thermal battery or even in buildings, we should do that cyclic test, and that should it is like a litmus test for that phase change material. If it can pass that cyclic test by making that charging and discharging at least for 1,000 to 1,500 cycles and more maximum for 5,000 cycles, then by rule of thumb we can say that that particular building where we are fixing this phase change material, or that thermal battery which we are utilizing for storing the thermal energy, can work for at least say 15 to 20 years, if not 50 years. So for buildings we generally say that life is around 100 years. So out of which, if the building can be incorporated with this PCM material, and one fourth of the life if we can go, I think it is good enough to save electricity and all.
Yeah. Okay. So
One more
that's
thing, madam, it is coming nowadays. I think that is also maybe you'd have heard about it. Like this phase change material, when it is discharging, then it becomes liquefied. When it
yeah.
is liquid, then in that case, dripping is a very big problem. If you are
Mm,
fixing it somewhere in the roof, then it can drip and it can damage all the means appliances
structure.
that they
Yeah.
are in the house. So there is one new concept which is called that shape reformed phase change material. So
Okay.
beyond certain temperature range, it will be not dripping. It will be taking a particular shape and it can retain it in that form. So that is the new research which is coming up in this phase change material thing, where shape reformed phase change material, they are also named as smart phase change material, which are coming up nowadays. Lot of research is going on in
Okay.
also.
Thank you, sir. There is another question from Samir Dohare. How compatible the proposed technology for space exploration projects?
Look, here I have taken it for conduction and convection. So basically, when it is means to be dealt with the space, then it is only the radiative heat transfer. So as I was telling that this phase change material, this latent heat energy storage system, they have the versatility in terms of the temperature. So starting from 20 degrees centigrade, 25 degrees centigrade, you can go up to 1400 degree centigrade if I'm speaking about silica as the phase change material. Now you have to see that what sort of temperature in the space you are getting. Is this catering to the requirement which you are planning to design this for? So then in that case, you can think of utilizing it in spacecraft or spaceships in contrast to what we are having now. Of course, temperature range is the biggest versatility of this phase change material based thermal batteries.
Okay. Sir, there is another question from Raminder Kaur Walia. Whether thermal cycles is available with you and whether we can send our samples for testing on payment non-payment basis.
Generally, we don't do it on payment basis because it is it's an academic institute. So means it is always better to do some collaborative type of work. So maybe IIT Delhi can participate in the work which you are doing. Means we will try to understand the requirement, and then we can provide it. And then if you are publishing or if you are writing some proposal, then in that case we can be the partner. So that way this is to be fulfilled because till now we have not gone to that structure where we are taking payment for this thing.
So, sir, it was quite uh, learning experience for us and everybody. It was quite informative and exhaustive for all the participants, and I'm sure everybody has gained something or other out of this. So, on behalf of coordinators, Atal Academy, and participants, once again, I thank you for sparing your valuable time and sharing your experience with us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, madam. It was good to be part of this workshop, and even
Yes,
means
sir.
it is a learning curve for me also. To
Yes, sir. So,
thank you
thank
for
you.
inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. You are
Thank
welcome.
you.